right, everybody. Welcome back to True Crime Loser. How's it going, everybody? That's good. So today I want to continue on my series, Chris Watts Realizes He's Outmatched, Part 3. And I figured I would already be at the polygraph by Part 3, but the interview between Chris and Tammy, the pre-polygraph interview, is so long, and I think there's enough to talk about that I am still not to the polygraph yet. What's interesting about this is Tammy never really turns up the pressure too much because she doesn't need to. She knows that either way, that $6,000 polygraph machine is just going to turn up the heat for her. In just a short time, little Chrissy Poo is going to be all strapped in, just like a space monkey ready to be shot into space. And so she doesn't really, she kind of just lets Chris talk. They almost talk for an hour. I'm watching Susan Bond's. She has the whole interrogation up, and this video is dealing from like an hour and a half to 2 hours and 44 minutes. That hour and 15 minutes is what this video is on, if you want to go and reference it. So Chris is he almost seems like he's in a good mood at this point. He's getting to talk about things that he doesn't have to lie about, and he's almost happy about it, and you can tell he's kind of feeling good, which is crazy, knowing that they're going to ask you whether you killed your wife on a polygraph soon, and he's sitting there kind of talking, and one time Tammy messes up the wording of a question, and she goes, "Oh, sorry," and he goes, "You're fine," and you can tell in Tammy's head, she's like, "Yeah, fucking Chris, I know I'm fine. What do you mean?" And it's funny because you could tell Chris, all that he's prepared is his lie. He hasn't at all thought about the way he would be acting while telling the lie. So he's kind of sitting there just almost in a good mood, which is even more telling than what you're saying, because he keeps saying about the talk that him and Shanann had at 4:15 when she got home, and he told her he wants to separate, and he keeps saying it was so emotional, and we were both crying so hard. And it's like, all right, well, if you were crying then, why are you lizard boy now? He's like, it was so emotional, and we all cried very hard. But Tammy's okay with the answers like that for now. She's like, okay, that sounds good. No pressure. Chris is starting to feel good. And one thing that Tammy was surprised about, that I was too, is that Shanann actually made real money doing Thrive. Chris said that she makes almost as much as he does working the oil fields, and this surprised me too. Not a knock against Shanann. I think it just shows that Shanann would be successful with anything that she did. I think she has the ability to create a community on social media, and then the leadership skills to lead that community. And I think with those traits, I think she would have been successful doing anything. But the fact that she was successful with patches, with vitamins, it just seems like a total scam to me. My parents sold Amway when I was a kid, and they didn't make any money. They didn't make a cent, and we just had a bunch of generic shit Amway products at our house for the next couple years. So I just thought all of those things were a scam and no one made money. But the fact that she had a car that was paid for, it's insane. Who is putting patches with vitamins on? Until this case, I had never even heard of it, and I would not use Thrive in a million years. Again, not a knock against Shanann, but I don't go with the trends. My grandparents are 90 years old, and I go with what they do. They cook with butter, I cook with butter. And like an article will come out and be like, don't use butter, use extra virgin olive oil. And then another article will come out and it'll be like, use coconut oil. And then an article will come out and be like, actually, coconut oil is horrible for you. Use butter. And it's like, I don't go with the trends. I just stick with what my 90-year-old grandparents do. All right, so this is kind of the main meat of this video. I said in other videos, the weakest part of Chris's story throughout this whole thing is the talk between him and Shanann at 4 a.m. when he says that he wants to separate. Because anyone that's lived a real life knows that that conversation is going to go not great. You know, you're telling your pregnant wife at 4 a.m. after she slept for 2 hours that you just, like, honestly, like, want a separation. And so, you know, Tammy's, as he's telling that about the talk, Tammy's like, so what was said? And he's like, you know, like, she just was crying and we were all crying. It was very emotional. And, it just doesn't make sense that she would have nothing to say in that situation. Also, I wrote down the timeline. It really doesn't make much sense. So here's the timeline. Shanann comes home at 1:48, walks in the door. They have the doorbell cam, right? Chris said she crawls in bed at 2 a.m. He doesn't wake up, but she feels him crawl into bed. So from 1:48 to 2 a.m., that's the only time that, just to go to the bathroom, get a drink, take off your clothes, I feel like it's going to take more than 12 minutes. But maybe she's just really tired and honestly just face planted into bed. So then Chris's alarm goes off at 4 a.m. And he does bathroom stuff for 15 minutes and then wakes Shanann up at 4:15. And he said that she wanted him to wake her up at 4:15 so she could take a shower and wash the airport off of her. Which, since this case, I've been using that phrase too. Both my girlfriend and I have. And it just shows you, like, even this case has, like, wormed its way into the culture so much that it's like Chris and Shanann's little phrases are probably going to live on through all of us just because we've taken in so much. But to me, what doesn't make any sense about that is who gets home at 2 a.m. after having delayed flights, you're pregnant, you're tired. Why would you wake up 2 hours after you went to sleep to take a shower? You're already in bed. Just sleep and then wash the sheets the next day. Like, it makes sense for them to wake up and talk because she's been traveling. But why would you wake up and just like, all right, I'm showered. Now it's 4:32 in the morning and I'm just sitting here showered. Probably should have kept sleeping. And then he said they talk from 4:15 to 5. And this is where Chris just can't come up with what was said, which makes me believe that, this conversation never happened. I think that maybe the conversation started and that's when he killed her. I'm not convinced she was sleeping. He had that big kind of cut right here. And I think Chris is, those mechanics have such strong, like, hands and forearms just from kind of tightening and doing that I think that he could have, if she wasn't sleeping, I think he could have very easily just overpowered her. Or maybe she was under the blankets and he was on top of her so she didn't have her hands. I'm not convinced she was sleeping. And so Tammy is pressuring him. All right, so what was said? You said you talked for 45 minutes. What was said? And he is saying, it's so emotional, and we were both crying, and he's saying that, like, I was saying we should separate and maybe get a cheaper house, and he's almost, he's almost talking about how he was saying we should separate, but maybe get like a house together. And so Tammy is like, wait a second, I'm confused. Are you saying that you guys should sell this house and then get another house together? And this is Chris's answer to that question. I wrote it out word for word because this is as Chris Watts of an answer as you'll get. So she goes, I'm confused. Are you going to get a house together or like separate? You're saying you're separating. And he goes, well, like, I wanted to sell the house just to like, so we could get like, if we do separate, like, we would have like some money to ourselves and we could like, I was hoping she would stay here, like, she told me like if we did separate, she couldn't live here alone. And Tammy's just kind of giving him the look of like, all right, well, that was incoherent. And so at this point, let's try to recap kind of where Chris is at. A lot of people are saying that they think Chris thought that he could pass the polygraph test, and I'm not sure that that's the case. I think what Chris's plan was at the beginning was just deny, deny, deny. As long as you just deny it, no matter how stupid the lie sounds, what are they going to do? And I think that he thought that maybe just agreeing to the polygraph, they would back off a little bit, being like, I don't know, he agreed to do it. And so maybe not even really actually do the polygraph. But I think he thought, I'm just going to act like a concerned father, even though Chris has no idea how to act concerned. He doesn't know how to even fake acting concerned. He seems happy in the interviews. And so I think that he figured he would go in, take the polygraph, even if once they told him, he'd either pass it because he's just a psycho and his body doesn't care about lying, or he would fail it, and then he'd just go back to the deny, deny, deny. And he would say, or at the most be like, I cheated on her. That's what I was hiding. And even if they say that's not how polygraphs work, Chris, he could just be like, well, I wasn't lying. So what do you want to do? And obviously it didn't work like that. But I think that he figured that even if he failed the polygraph, if he just kept denying, what are they going to do? And, it's just hilarious that he figured that he could just kind of muscle through that. And real quick, I wanted to kind of speculate for a second on what would have happened if Chris would have completely just stayed silent from the beginning, because there's a lot of, it's like, would he talk? Why would he do, the polygraph? Why would he do any of it? He should have just stayed silent. It's like, okay, how would that have looked? I think that if he would have just from the very beginning just said, I don't know, we had to talk about separating, and she left. And I think she's being dramatic, and I think she's trying to make me feel bad or miss her, and I don't know where she is, but she's gone, and I know how this usually goes when a wife and kid's missing, so I know you're going to blame me anyway, so I'm not going to cooperate at all, and I want a lawyer. I think if he would have taken that angle, I mean, it would have been crazy because he would have just been obviously the number one suspect, but he was anyway. So I think if he would have done that angle, he would have had an extra night in the house to maybe wash those sheets and take them out of the trash and wash the sheets. It's one of his dumbest things he did is throw the sheets away. Like I said in another video, you never throw sheets away. I have sheets that are 10 years old that are just sitting in the closet. So he could have taken those out of the trash, washed them, put them in the hall closet. He could have maybe hid her phone somehow. But either way, it would have ended in the same spot because they would have had the neighbor's security camera footage, which proved no one left. Shanann didn't leave. So, and then they would have had the GPS on his truck, which they would have followed to the first site that he went, because they know that it takes a while to get rid of 3 bodies, so they would have just followed. It pinged every 10 seconds, so they would have followed to the first time. It pinged a bunch of times, which is that site. I think they would have found Shanann pretty quickly with dogs. She was only like 10 or 15 feet off of kind of the work site. And then I think a cop would have been looking around, kind of going, where would he put those 2 girls? And then all of a sudden there would have been 2 oil tanks right there. And then he would have said to someone like, do those open? And they would have been like, yeah, there's like a hatch up top. And I think they would have gone up there, opened the hatch, and then tested the rim of the hatch for biological material, found some, and then found them that way. So I think that Chris, even if, that's just my speculation, so let me know if you disagree, but I think either way, Chris is going to end up in the exact same spot, maybe a day or 2 later, if he would have stayed silent. Okay, so anyway, I think that's where I'm going to stop this video. Next will be the polygraph, and then I'm thinking I might skip the polygraph, just tell everyone to go watch it. It's just so structured and so hard to watch because Chris is just sitting there, still, and it's like the build up to the questions, like, did you physically cause Shanann's disappearance? Or just the build up to that, and Chris is just, he goes, no, and you can just tell he knows that he's fucked. That needle is like, you're fucked, Chris, you are fucked. And oh yeah, next video I want to talk about too, about how they have to go over how you would physically make someone disappear. So when she asked that question, and it's so funny, they're like, I guess it's not funny, but they're like, how could you make someone disappear? And he's like, you could, and he's naming all of the ways that you could make someone disappear, but he's not saying strangle or smother. And so he's like kind of running out. He's like, you could hire someone to make them disappear, or you could, and Tammy goes, or you could strangle. And Chris is like, yeah, you could strangle. And he's like, or you could smother. He's like, yeah, you could. That's a thing. You could smother. And it's just another, like, Tammy, I think, had him nailed down right there. So many people had him pinned long before his pathetic confession with his dad sitting there rubbing his back. So I'm thinking I'm going to watch the polygraph and start taking notes and see if there's a video in there, or I may skip just the actual polygraph and do to right after, where they're telling him, look, buddy, like, we got to talk. You failed. And then he's like, can I talk to my dad? Which is ironic, because at the worst, lowest place of his life, he wants his dad. And he had just done that to his kids. He says over and over that his dad was his hero, his dad is his best friend, and then he pulled that as dad. It's just... But anyway, we're going to keep moving through this thing. Thanks a lot for watching and subscribing. Anybody that's supporting this channel, I really appreciate it. I hope you're having a good day. True Crime Loser, out.